How you guys doing? I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to another episode of Vaughn Coleman Presents. Today is a very special episode. It's one that I've anticipated for quite a while because I have a great artist, legendary artist in the field. Ladies and gentlemen, you know him, and if you don't, you're going to meet him now. But you definitely are aware of his work. Please welcome Graham Nolan. Graham, how you doing?
Hello, Vaughn. Thank you for having me on your show.
It's a pleasure. So, how you doing? How's everything going?
Doing good. Doing good. Been busy. I got two campaigns going, and it takes a lot of time between doing the art and the production work and then the streaming stuff, So, but I've got the energy, so I'm good.
That's good. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, you've got two campaigns running, so we're definitely gonna send those out there. But obviously everyone knows you. I just a quick background. I always like to ask my guests, especially when they get into comics. Well, really in general, I want to ask, what got you into comic books?
Comic books themselves.
Yeah.
My teacher brought in a stack of comics for us to read during recess, and when I was in the sixth grade, so I was like 11, maybe 12 years old, something like that, and that's when I first really I had them growing up, here and there, but that was the moment where I saw these new comics. One in particular was this Justice League comic, and it was like all these superheroes that I knew from other media and stuff, and I was like, wow, this stuff is really great. And then so that was it. I was hooked right then and there.
Wow. So Justice League. So what was the specific? Do you remember the specific issue or?
It was one of those 60-cent giants. It was like 114, I want to say, something like that.
Let me look it up. Sorry, I'm just making sure that this is. Yeah, that sounds about right. 114. Let me see. So who were your favorite characters then in that issue? I don't think I've read that one.
There was Superman and Batman were my favorites.
Yeah, of course.
And it was written by Len Wein, illustrated by Dick Dillon and Dick Giordano.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool.
That's great. Yeah, I just pulled it up. Yep, spot on.
Let me see what cover it is.
Yeah,
I'll tell you if that's the right one.
Yeah, well, I was looking at the creative team, and so far you're batting. You got it 100%. This it?
No, it's earlier than that. What number is that?
114.
All right, go back to 112.
That's it?
No. Let's try 111.
Was this monthly?
Yeah. That's it.
This one?
That's it. 111.
Oh, that's it. That's cool. Oh, they got the the original lineup minus no Wonder Woman?
No.
Or Martian Manhunter?
No Wonder Woman was in it, yeah.
Or Martian Manhunter, damn.
No.
Elongated Man though. He hasn't. I feel like I never see him around anymore in comics.
Who?
Elongated Man. Elongated Man. Oh, Martian Manhunter they pushed away too, which really upset me when I was first getting into comics. They just booted him off the original lineup. But so you found these. Your teacher brought them in, and you were how old again?
Let's see. So that's July issue.
Let me
see.
June or July? That is June.
June issue. So it was March. So I was 11. I just turned 12. I would have turned 12 in March.
Oh, gotcha. Wow. So yeah, that's around the same age that I started reading comics, I think, too. So did you know right away that you wanted to do that for a career?
I did. Yeah. And I remember telling my parents and that that's what I wanted to do. And my mom, who was a teacher, was very supportive. She always supported the arts and stuff. My dad was a cop. He was a homicide detective in Nassau County, and he was a bit more prosaic about it. he said, "You've got two cousins with master's degrees in art from Pratt Institute in New York City. One of them was flipping pizzas, and the other one was laying brick."
Oh,
so he said, if you don't want to go to college, learn a trade, be a plumber or electrician or something like that. He discouraged me from going into the police department and law enforcement, but I eventually won him over.
Oh, that must have taken some persuasion. Yeah, that's always the tough sell telling parents you're going to be an art student, especially when they pull up the statistics and they're like, well, but a homicide detective, that's really ironic. So did your dad really appreciate you working on Detective Comics then when that finally came around?
Uh, I suppose. I mean, he just wasn't into superhero type stuff. Where I really won him over is when I left comics and got into um, a newspaper strips.
Oh, wow.
Because that was something he understood because he got the newspaper every day, and so those comic strips would come into his house. And so when he saw my name on a comic strip, it was funny. I was working on Rex Morgan, MD, which was a medical soap opera strip. And one of the first stories we did was on the topic of black mold, and it was a mystery. The readers didn't know it was black mold, and so Rex goes down into this basement, and there's this terrible smell, and all of a sudden my phone rings, and it's my dad, and he doesn't say hello, he just says, "I know what the smell is." I go, "Oh, okay." So right then and there, when he said that, I knew he was reading the stuff.
That's really cool.
And I said, "Okay, what is it?" He goes, "There's a stiff in the basement."
He really is a detective.
Perfect homicide detective. There's a stiff
Yeah.
in the basement.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So did you pull from that a lot when you were working with Detective Comics? I know you were an artist more so, but did you pull from those experiences of having a dad who's a homicide detective or stories he told you or whatnot?
Oh, as a writer, I have for sure. They're some of the best storytellers, especially if you get Irish
Mhm.
cops together.
Mm.
Those guys know how to spill the blarney and tell really good stories. They know how to set up a story for an impact or a joke. And so hanging around those guys was always a great learning experience because if you listened to the cadence, listened to how they told stories. And then the stories themselves were always just fascinating.
Mhm.
It's not the kind of stuff you hear every day.
Right.
And so, yeah, the dialogue, the idioms that are used, those type of things that I definitely, when I'm writing dialogue, if I'm writing a cop or criminals or something like that, I think back on that.
That's really cool. I find that stuff so interesting. And I was just reading actually your first issues on Detective Comics of issues, what was it, 450 to 453, right?
650.
So was it six? Wow, I was way
Yeah,
off on that.
yeah, 650.
Yeah, I was reading those, and I just found it really cool that like what I thought was really interesting was even though the cover for issue 650 has Batman right on the cover, he's not even in the issue, um, which I thought was really so. How did that when you were doing your first Batman issue when and the decision was made, I guess that Batman wouldn't be in it. Was that something you were disappointed? Because I love the issue. I mean, I'm a big Tim Drake guy.
Hmm.
But were you like, man, I really wanted to get to Batman in the next issue, or how did you feel about that?
Well, I mean, there wasn't a next issue. It was a one shot.
Right.
They wanted me to do 650. They were sort of in between artists. I believe the regular guy at that point was Mike Nasser, and they were having troubles with deadlines with him. Henceforth, they needed a fill in. They needed me to do 650. So it just happened to be that issue that didn't have Batman in it. But they loved the way I told the story, the dynamics I put into it, and the fact that I turned it in on time. So then they gave me three more, I think, three more issues to do,
Mhm.
and those did have Batman in it.
Yeah.
Maybe four issues because then 651 was the Bullet for Bullock,
Yeah. That
and
was one.
then that was a great one. That one got turned into a cartoon too.
Yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about actually, is because I didn't know that you had done that story because I've seen the episode of the show, and then when I
Hmm.
was reading, I was like, oh, look at that! Like that was I had no idea you guys are behind that storyline. So
Yeah.
because I do remember that episode, and then I remember reading the comic, and you. So I guess how many episodes? I know obviously the Bane episode was pulled from you guys. Bullet for Bullock. Were there any other ones that they lifted directly from you guys?
I can't remember. It was so long ago. Now I haven't seen the cartoon show in many, many years, so not sure.
But that was, I mean, that was great. It's fun. It was a funny choice for a kids show too, which is why I think that series is so great. Is because you wouldn't think that that would be. Wasn't Harvey Bullock a relatively new character as well when you came onto the scene?
Technically, yes. His personality got brought into and evolved recently, but really, Harvey Bullock first appeared in Detective 441 all the way back in 1974,
Oh wow!
and he was first drawn by Howard Chaykin.
Oh wow! I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Was it? Was he? How was he? Was he one of those characters that was majorly shifted after Crisis?
No, I don't think he appeared in. I can't remember any comics Harvey Bullock appeared in after 441
Hmm.
up until the 1990s when
Oh
he got
okay.
brought into it. Um, so yeah.
So I'm curious. So when you got it, you started. You went to the Kubert School, right,
Mhm.
for college, and then and over there, I'm sure you like met some people who we know who became artists. I know actually Stephen Pinella reached out to me. I don't know if you remember him, but he
Mhm.
actually said he was like, "Oh, you're having Graham Nolan on? I know Graham from Kubert
Mhm.
School."
Yeah.
He was reaching out to me on that because he did some Phenom Comics work too. That's how I know him.
Oh, okay.
Um, and so from there, after the Kubert School, what was your first comic book work?
First comic book work was actually in the Kubert School. I had two stories that I had done for Sal Amendola's the sequential art class that he bought because he was the editor of New Talent Showcase at DC Comics. So
Hmm.
he bought those two class projects to run in New Talent Showcase. So that
Hmm.
was my first professional sale.
Hmm. That's great. And from there, how did you end up? You worked. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did you work at Marvel before DC or?
Well, that was DC.
Oh,
Then I went to Eclipse Comics
right.
and worked there for a couple of years, and then I went to Marvel and did the Transformers for them. I
Mm.
did one issue of the Transformers. Then I went back to DC and I think that's the timeline. And that's when I picked up some stuff there, like Doom Patrol,
Hmm.
the Suicide Squad annual, um, and then Power of the Atom,
Hmm.
and then from there, Hawk World.
Yeah, Hawkworld. I know you did a long run on. I know a lot of
Yeah,
people love that story. As convoluted as Hawkman's history is, that's one of the I know most beloved
yeah,
ones.
I'd like to see them collect that because it was really cool.
Oh,
You
they
know,
haven't collected it.
not that I know of.
That seems to be a reoccurring theme with you, Graham. What they're doing, they keep not collecting your work. Like another one of my, I read one of your favorites recently that I was.
Devil's Advocate.
Yeah, I read that recently. I was going to build up to that, but I did have Bobby ask, if you have any good Sal Amendola stories?
Just that Sal was a great guy and he was a mentor to me. He used to have me come in every Thursday. I'd boss in, get off at Port Authority, and then walk uptown to DC. I'd get into the back offices because back then you could just ride the elevator up, and then there was an office, and then Ruthie, who was the desk secretary there, she was the gatekeeper. Once you got to know her, she'd let you back. And then I'd go to Sal's office, and then Sal would take me around and introduce me to other editors, say, hey, this is a student of mine. He's really good, blah, blah, blah. So it started building relationships. But the reason Thursday was the day I would go in is because then a bunch of the editors and talent would go out to like these bars afterwards, and they'd usually somebody would put it on the DC credit card. So starving artists, I'd get some free drinks and some
Oh
free
yeah.
meals and stuff like that, and listen to great stories. Guys like Dick Giordano and Ernie Colon and Gray Morrow were regulars at these things, and it was interesting to just keep my mouth shut and listen and absorb what they had to say, particularly about what they were going through in the business at that time.
That's awesome. I know. I mean, Dick Giordano, especially, is, I mean, a legend with all the stuff I've seen of him. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, that must have been amazing to
Yeah,
work
one
with those
time
guys.
a whole bunch of us. It was Dick Giordano, Terry Austin,
Oh, I love him too.
Sal Amendola, Joe Brzezowski. Might have been Dennis Cowan too, and me. All went up to Continuity, Neil Adams' studio,
Hmm.
because Neil had all those guys had worked on the black and white $6 Million Man magazine
Hmm.
that was sort of like done through Continuity Studios, even though it was a Charlton magazine, and he was returning the artwork to the guys. So we had
Hmm.
all gone up there, and I got to meet Neil and see him returning this artwork. It was really cool.
And how was meeting Neil Adams? Were you a big fan of his work beforehand?
Oh yeah, yeah. I always admired, particularly his covers. You
Oh,
know,
his covers are beautiful.
yeah, yeah. But I was nobody, and so
Right.
I got treated as such.
Yeah, did he give you a brutal? I've heard a lot of stories about him giving brutal portfolio reviews too. You get one from him
I
or no?
never get I never give him my portfolio.
Oh, okay, it's a wise
Yeah,
move.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I have had brutal portfolio reviews. One from Dick Giordano,
oh wow,
and one from Larry Hama.
ooh, that was rough. But those
Yeah.
were I remember like Frank hearing all the stories about like how Frank Miller would get rejected by like everything, and then he ended up coming out the gate being one of the brightest out there, obviously.
Oh yeah. Well, there's three things you can do with criticism. You can learn from it, you
Mhm,
can ignore it, or you can
mhm.
let it crush you.
Yeah,
Those are your three choices.
right,
So I take the criticism depending on the source, and I filter it that way.
right.
And then I not everything is going to be right, and not everything's going to be right for me. So I sift out the stuff that I think is not pertinent. I use the stuff that is, and I move forward and try to better it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's the perfect layout of criticism. It's also just I mean, also not even just who it comes from, but also just if you're like, yeah, this is bad faith criticism, to just kind of can
Oh
that
yeah, I've
good
seen
stuff.
guys. I've seen guys give criticisms to artists at shows, and I'm like, dude, you're crushing this guy. This is not a good portfolio review. There's another way of saying what you're saying. You don't
Right.
have to be mean spirited about it.
Yeah.
Or be a dick.
Hmm.
And some guys, unfortunately, can be that way. You can be honest, but you can also,
Hmm.
there's always something that you can point to and say, okay, this is a good strength you have here. Build on this. Here's your
Hmm.
weaknesses. And you can tell if they're serious about it by how they take it.
How did you? Because I've seen you actually do a portfolio review. I remember at MegaCon. I just watched. Have you ever had any? Now that the shoe's on the other foot, anyone come up to you that was like interesting for portfolio reviews?
That was interesting.
Yeah, or just any interesting experiences coming up with portfolio reviews.
Yeah. I mean, I've only had one guy come up to me with his portfolio where I said, "Holy shit, this guy's really good."
Mm.
And I would send him on to some editors or something, say, "Hey, go talk to him and tell him I sent you," type of thing.
Oh
There's only
wow.
one guy that I felt was really, really good. Um, most of the time, the guys are past their expiration date when they show me their stuff. They're 35, 40 years old. They're still not ready. You're never going to make it in this kind of a business at that point if,
Mm.
you haven't developed your skills thoroughly at that point.
Gotcha. That's good to know. So, artists of the audience, make sure you take note of everything Graham's saying. Because for me, I'm a writer.
These are words of iron, people.
Yeah, words of iron. Words of iron. So that's some great stuff. So I was reading through some of your stuff, and obviously I want to talk about Devil's Advocate, but I do want to address the elephant in the room, and that is, well, Bane turned 30 this year, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's crazy. One of the things that's crazy about this character is
Technically,
especially.
it was last year. I mean, the book
Oh,
came
was it?
out. Yeah, because the character was designed in 92, but when
Mm.
and the work was done on the book in 92. When it was published, I think it's a 1993
Mm-hmm.
publishing date, because it came
Oh,
out
is that
like,
right?
yeah, I think it came out like in December
Right.
of 92. But it had like a February date on it or whatever, because they always go out.
Oh,
The
that's
issues are
interesting.
always out for like 4 months.
Oh, that's yeah. That one had like 3 reprints too, didn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
That's one of the things that I think is so interesting about Bane's first appearance is I can't think of that many other villains that have their own graphic novel to debut in. Like even if it comes out afterwards, like for example, they had Joker has a new girlfriend, Punchline. Even still,
Right.
she appeared in Batman, and then they gave her own series. I've
Right.
never,
I don't think it's ever been done that I can't remember any other time where they debuted a villain in his own book.
and it was great. I mean, reading through because it was one of those things where like you have to understand, like for my generation, what I find fascinating is because so many people I know, they Bane is considered a newer villain. It's funny how comics work that right that 30 is like you're still like a baby. But like in the world of Batman, where everyone has been around since like the 40s, maybe Poison Ivy was what 60s, 70s. I don't
60s.
know. 60s, right? Of course, yeah, you're the expert. Like and Raish is 70s, but like having someone like Bane, what's interesting is about my generation is because we would play the video games, we watched the movies and the shows. Bane was up there with the Joker and Penguin and all these classic villains. He was just one of them. So like he's just a part of that mythology and will be forever. It's one
Right.
of the things that
For people of your age, Bane is an always villain.
oh yeah.
Or like Superman or Batman or an always hero. They were
Yeah,
always
right.
there from the moment I was born. That character had already been
Mhm.
around.
Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, not only has he always been there, but even you look at characters that have been there for like a close amount of time. Like take for example Azrael, right? He was around the same time, but you ask anyone who Azrael is if they're a Batman fan, like they'll know if they're a big Batman fan. But like they'll know who Bane, like people know who Bane is who've never read a comic book in their
Sure.
lives. And I think
Yeah,
that's
because of the other media.
oh yeah, like they put him in everything, and I think that's. I mean, I'm sure you must love that. I'm sure even if I'm not sure how you always feel about how he's portrayed, but I'm sure that must be great. I remember asking you this, but I've never asked you this, so I'm going to ask as if I haven't. Did you ever see Batman and Robin?
No,
Will you ever see Batman and Robin?
probably not.
Yeah, it's not
Uh,
really a good use of your time, if I'm
Chuck
being
and I,
honest.
it came out, I think, when we were in San Diego.
Hmm.
We were at a convention together, and for 3 nights, we went to the movie theaters to go see it. And each night we said, nah, let's go see Face Off, or let's go see this. We go see another movie instead because we'd seen all these clips from it, and we were like, oh, this is painful. I don't want to sit through 2 hours of this shit.
Oh, it was one of the worst things. That was one of my earlier exposures to Bane, and so that's I think one of the problems with when people say, "Yo, it's great to have my stuff um, on here," but I think one of the problems is when they misinform people. Like I grew up for a while thinking Bane was just this big dumb brute because
Right.
that's how they always portrayed him, and even some media that I like Batman Arkham Asylum and Arkham
Right.
City. I love those games, but Bane is an idiot in those games. He's
Mm.
a big dumb brute. And then finally I start seeing intelligent portrayals of him. And I was like, I mean, the movie, I can't even imagine how you would react to that. I mean, to be fair and giving Batman our own credit, does he look bad? Absolutely. But he looks like they kind of tried to go for the
Yeah.
design. They
Yeah.
kind of tried.
They had a really big guy. He's more like
Hmm.
an S&M Bane looking guy, but he
Hmm.
looked more like, if you looked at him, you would say, I think that's Bane.
Yeah, right.
Whereas with Tom Hardy, you look at him, you're like,
That's Bane.
is
Yeah,
this guy from the Alien movie? Because he's got a
yeah,
face hugger on his face.
yeah, yeah. And they no Venom. It was
Right.
weird. So, were you a fan of The Dark Knight Rises then, or
No,
no?
no,
Yeah.
it wasn't a good movie, period, regardless of Bane being in it. And Chuck and I didn't even get credited. I mean, they give the
That's
freaking caterer credit and the dog handler. They get credit. But the guys who created Bane didn't get credit.
that's ridiculous. That's so That's absolutely insane that you didn't get any credit for that. Did you guys at least get royalties?
Yeah, we got royalties.
Naming the credits would have been nice, though, I imagine.
Well, yeah. What's it cost them?
Yeah.
It
Did they
doesn't cost
credit
you. Somebody types it in, boom, you're up there.
Yeah.
Now, I did get credit in the Batman, the latest film,
Oh, that's good.
because of the Penguin. I recreated the Penguin, and that's the one they used.
Yeah, I love the look of the Penguin in that movie. I thought it.
Now, I didn't get any royalties for it, but I got credit. So it looks like I either get one or the other.
Yeah, one or the other. You don't get. Yeah. What do you think? You're an important Batman creator or something?
Yeah,
You don't
right?
get that. Yeah. No, that's ridiculous. Did you get credit on Batman and Robin?
No.
You don't want credit for that movie, though, if I'm being honest with you. But it's kind of like how Alan Moore wanted his name removed from the Watchmen movie. I mean,
the first time we got credit was in I think a Justice League cartoon. Was the first time, and I don't know if maybe they changed their policy or something after that to put the credits in for everybody or acknowledge them or something, whatever. But from that point on, it seems like we've gotten credit in the other media.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a step. It's a step in the right direction. So I do want to pull up before I get back to just get totally consumed in the world of Batman. I do want to bring up. So Graham is currently got some Indiegogos out right now, and we have this one right here. So Joe Frankenstein. So Graham, after you haven't been working the big two, tell us about Joe Frankenstein.
Well, Joe Frankenstein was a book that was originally published by IDW. It was written by me and Chuck, and it was our love letter to the Universal Monster films. It's a high adventure tale about a boy who doesn't know his lineage. He thinks his name is Joe Pratt, and then he's delivering pizzas one night, gets attacked by these vampires, and the Frankenstein monster saves him and informs him of this world of monsters and darkness that nobody knows about, and that he is the last heir to the Frankenstein name. He's Joe Frankenstein.
Oh.
And the monster has the secret of eternal life, obviously, in his blood, but the key to unlock it is in Joe's blood. And so the bride is after the monster and Joe to secure their blood, because she does not have that. When Victor Frankenstein created her, he wasn't going to make the same mistake twice, and he didn't give her eternal life. So she's been keeping herself alive through sorcery and surgeries, but she wants it, and she's going after Joe and the monster.
That's awesome. Did you is this more of a follow-up? Because I noticed the design looks more like the Universal version, but then the way you describe it, I'm curious, did you pull from the books as well, or is it your own continuity? Or
it's our own continuity with certainly there's like Joe Pratt, is the name that Joe Frankenstein goes by, and William Henry Pratt is Boris Karloff's real name.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there's all these little Easter eggs to monsters, monster actors, the Universal films, all that kind of stuff throughout the story.
That's so cool. You're a big Universal Monsters fan, then, I would assume.
Well, before I was a comic fan, I was a monster kid. I saw Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman when I was 8 years old and fell in love with monsters at that point. And I found out about comics outside of my teacher bringing those comics in, but I would see them peripherally in these magazines, these monster magazines that I would read, like the Monster Times. They would cover, the convention scene in New York and all that kind of stuff back in the early 1970s. And so I was reading about what was happening in comics even then, but yeah, I was a monster kid first.
I used to always take out horror. I mean, I always like superheroes as well, but I'm a big horror movie guy too, so this seems right up my alley. So would you like me to play the trailer now?
Sure. If you like, cool. Yeah, it's a really cool trailer. There's my Universal Monsters send up right there. That's how they start all the Universal Monsters.
Oh yeah, I haven't watched those since I was in preschool. Oh, he's got the cigar, of course.
Yeah, of course. He's a cool cat.
Yeah.
He's been around for like 200 years.
Yeah.
He's had plenty of time to work on his personality, work on his finances. The monster is actually a billionaire.
Oh, wow. That's cool. That animation at the end, the title is phenomenal.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
Nick Grosh is the fella's name who does all my trailers. He's out of San Diego. Really, really excellent guy. I've turned other CG guys onto him. I think he's done Aaron's trailer and he's done Andy's trailer. And he just does great work. He always does a super job for me.
I'll have to look into him then. Wow, that was really good. So this is part 1. So is this when you said it was published through IDW? So is this covering part of what was published through IDW?
Yes. This collects the first 2 issues from IDW, but it also has the prologue, which was only available in the out of print hardcover book. So this will collect the prologue and the first 2 issues, and then part 2 will collect the second half. And then once those are published under the Compass Comics banner, then new stories are going to be written by Chuck and I, and we'll go from there.
That's a lot of fun. I remember really liking that stuff. All this right here. Oh, of course, you got the cigar. Yeah. That one's fun.
I've had by gram of whiskey, by gram of beer, and this one's by gram of cigar.
Oh yeah. So what about by gram of Hawaiian shirt? That ever come in? Or do you have
that one hasn't come up.
You have enough? Have you made a Compass Comics Hawaiian shirt yet?
Not yet.
I feel like that's got to be. I mean, just the visual, Graham, of us on the cigar nights with all of Compass Comics Hawaiian shirts.
Hawaiian shirts. That would be awesome.
Yeah, right. Just to see.
I'm gonna look into it.
Yeah, it's. I think it's. This is. I like the way you do these covers too. It's got like that classic. I think a lot of covers today often are just like pinups.
Yes.
And it's funny because people will always say, people are just nitpicking and it's nostalgia, but it's like a lot of those old covers. You look at them and. I mean, look, not every cover I'm going to say back in the day was memorable, right? Or not every cover today isn't. But like there were a lot of times where they just they really grab you. And this one, they're often just, and I love me a good pinup and group shot, don't get me wrong, but not every cover should be that. And I like even this one too. Who was this? Anthony Gonzalez Clark? Okay.
Yeah. Anthony did a great job on that.
This is and the issues are what, 24 pages?
27. So
27. Oh, wow.
Yeah, the actual book, part 1, will be 72 pages. Because it's going to have a lot of extras. It has the 10-page prologue, and there's lots of extras, designs. There's going to be the original logo designs done by the great Gaspar Saladino. If you don't know who he is, he was one of the premier logo designers for DC Comics. He did Swamp Thing, Marvel too, Ghost Rider. He was primarily known for the horror comics that he did, but he also did untold amounts of other logos of comics that we've all read. He was amazing. He was 80 something years old, and the Joe Frankenstein logo is one of his last logos. He just super guy. So grateful to be able to get him to do that.
That's amazing. I know Bobby has an idea for it here. Said, buy Grandma a fully functional Bane Venom suit. Yeah, that'll be.
Yeah, instead of Venom, we'll just put tequila up my arm.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a little addictive, a little less addictive than Venom, I would say.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, well, yeah, it has, we're Irish, I'm sure, although tequila is not Irish. So make sure to back that. Let me put the link out there. Let's hit our DNA. They'll handle our liquor, I think. So that one's great, and then it goes to Matacumba Key. I will pull that up as well.
Yeah. I
think honestly, I would have never guessed that you were a monster. I mean, now it makes sense. But I guess then again, you just kind of assume that you never really. It's weird. It's like when you're in the superhero world, it's almost like you're just kind of like a Batman guy. So you appreciate kind of branching out to these other things?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I never got to do too much like uh, a lot of the superhero comics I did were somewhat grounded. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I never got to do like a whole lot of cosmic stuff. Um, uh, and that stuff is fun to do, where you can just make up everything. And I eventually like to do something like that. But my style of storytelling is much more grounded. Those are the smaller stories I like to tell, the more personal interest, personal relationship stuff. Those are the kind of stories I really enjoy telling. I just want to tell anybody who's watching now, or if they tune in later, that Joe Frankenstein, that campaign is only up for 13 more days.
Okay, so
And then it's down. It's not going in demand because the
let me pull
files are
that up
going
again.
out. The files are going out to the printer as soon as it's done, because I plan to fulfill that no later than the beginning of June.
Yeah, make sure you guys get on that then. I
Yeah,
mean, that's 72 pages. That's a great deal. Everyone make sure you get on that.
yeah, it's perfect bound, spot UV, upgraded paper, um, all kinds of stuff, and there's no stretch goals because everything comes with it. You're getting the sticker, you're getting the Compass Comic sticker, you're getting the Joe Frankenstein logo sticker, and you're getting the bookmark.
And this takes place before Ghost of Matacumba Key, right?
Correct, correct. And in my first book that I did, the Chenoo, there's reference to Joe Frankenstein. When if you go back and read that, there's a scene where a doubting Thomas guy is disbelieving the idea of this snow creature that's hunting them.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "Ah, that's just a legend, like that old chestnut about the kid and the monster living in the grain elevators."
I remember because I was looking that up, and I remember when I was reading the Chenoo, which I thought was great, um, and I was like, "What?" Like I thought that was a reference to an obscure urban legend because I was frantically looking for it. I felt so
Well,
stupid.
that's Joe Frankenstein that he's talking about there.
Mm.
So I've embedded that stuff into all the other stories. There's Easter eggs in Alien Alamo too, and then when the Ghosts of Metacumba Key come out, all this stuff is going to be made clear that it's all in the same universe.
Yeah, it's really cool. And what I like about it too is the way I think there's a certain almost OCD obsession. Like I love a shared universe. I'm sure you do too. But there's like almost this obsession that like they need to constantly remind everyone that everything is connected, and so everything. And I like that these are like self-contained stories, and you're kind of taking your time with it. Like I'm not sure if you ever watched the newer DC movies, but they just kind of like they did Superman movie, and then they just rushed into crossovers immediately. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
take the time to tell individual stories.
Right.
But here is, I mean, where it works because the Universal monster movies are the same way, right? They were just all standalone films.
No, they connected because Frankenstein meant the Wolf Man.
Oh, right, but I'm saying like to start with, right? Is what I meant, right?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then
And then
they
they
started,
brought them together. Yeah.
right. Age for Heretic, I guess it's someone new. Is sign up for part 2 as soon as part 1 closes.
Yes. Yep.
Make
Actually,
sure
I'll
you guys
probably
get
get the
them.
sign up list before it closes to get that going because I want to launch part 2 shortly thereafter.
Oh, and then is Matacumba Key coming out?
Yeah, Matacumba Key comes out in August.
Oh, cool. All right, that's really fun. I don't know how far because Matacumba Key is a real place, right?
Yeah, it's in the Florida
Yeah,
Keys.
yeah. I'll have to, when I'm there, maybe I'll whip it out. I'll read it.
Yeah,
Compare the
yeah.
landscape.
When you're in Isla Morada,
Isla
which is,
Morada.
yeah,
Okay.
you know where Isla Morada is. That is on Upper Matacumba Key.
Okay.
That's the key that Isla Morada is on, and there is a hurricane monument there for the 500 and something people that died in the 1935 hurricane. If you look it up, it's a fascinating read. It's the most powerful hurricane to ever hit the United States. I mean, a wall of water 18 feet high washed
It's
across.
always Florida too. It's always Florida.
Well, yeah, it's, and that's in the tropics, you know.
Mhm.
They didn't have weather satellites and all that kind of stuff. They just had ships at sea looking at barometric pressures and stuff like that, and calling into the shore saying, hey, the storm's out here, blah, blah, blah. And they thought it was going to hit Key West, and it didn't. It came further north and hit, because Ernest Hemingway was down there living in Key West at the time. And then when it did hit, it was just, you had all these World War I veterans that were working on the overseas highway at the time as part of Roosevelt's getting people back to work thing during the Depression. And so they were living in tent cities, and then the hurricane comes and it killed so many of them.
That's wild.
Yeah, and that's the basis of the ghosts in the Ghosts of Metacumba Key.
Right. Is there people who use? Yeah, I remember you telling me that. I mean, that's great. Just pulling from the history of that and going off. I definitely really like that kind of stuff. So I did want to talk about briefly. So I like that. Because I'm sure you've gone through Bane's origin a bunch of times, so I won't ask about that. But I will ask because I'm curious. Did you expect the character to be as big of a hit as he was today?
No. We expected him to be popular during the Nightfall storyline, and he was. And then when it was all over, there was he appeared in the cartoon show, the animated series,
Mhm.
And then there was a long break. Well, there was also the Batman and Robin movie, but after that practically killed it. And so then there was nothing until Arkham Asylum. And when that came out, the game, and then that came out, it was like it exposed Bane to an entirely new audience of young people that, some of them were just babies when Bane first came out, and
we're not
and
born
from
yet.
that
In my
point
case.
on, he just, it hit the zeitgeist, and he really entered into the pop culture.
See, I remember actually getting introduced to Bane before that. So I was born in '99, right? So I remember, I think it was playing a game at a friend's house that wasn't Arkham Asylum. It was before that. It was like the Batman show because Bane was in that. And there was a boss with Bane. I also remember the Lego sets would always have Bane figures. So the Lego game.
Okay.
So that was like my introduction to Bane. And they used your classic design for the Legos, I remember, actually, which, I really like. I love the red eyes, honestly, that original Bane design. Sometimes I feel like they keep, like Arkham Asylum design, they way overdid it. The simplicity of that luchador design, how much of that, I do wonder, was you, like the luchador stuff, did that come from you?
Yeah, because after talking to Chuck about what was going to happen with this character, what his background was, we needed a costume and a look for him. And I was like, well, what would this guy in this Central American or South American, I'm not sure where Penadora is, or is it Santa Prisca? I can never remember which one's the island and which one's the prison.
I think it's
Santa Prisca.
Penadoro.
Penadoro's the prison.
Penadoro's the island because it means it was something. I have the book. Let me grab it real quick. It says it in the book. Give me a second.
Well, anyway,
all right.
So
according to the original book, it is. Oh, I just grabbed the wrong one. All right, whatever. Should I grab
it? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, but I think it was Penadoro. Was the island? I think.
Okay.
It was something rock, hard rock, or I don't know.
Yeah. You might be right.
Santa Prisca's island. All right. Apparently, I'm wrong. Well,
B.S. Warren says Santa Prisca is the island. Okay.
All right, we'll take your word for it. So if you're wrong, when people commenting on this years from now, they'll blame you. If you're right, you'll be vindicated. So we'll see.
So then I figured, well, what would he be exposed to? Maybe seeing something on TV. It would have been Mexican luchador. So that's where I went with it. That
60 something pages for a villain origin. And again, never been done, having him front and center. Batman's barely even in the issue. I mean, it's a great origin too, because I had heard, bits that he was like in prison for his father's crimes, which, by the way, what was the deal with Bane's father? Was he killed, or did he escape the country, or?
Well, Chuck had it set up that his father was King Snake. The British is the villain King Snake.
Who Chuck
But
created, right?
I think so. But we never got to reveal it. But I think it got revealed. It might have been Scott. Scott Beatty might have wrote the story because Chuck told him about where we were going with this stuff. After we were sort of not doing much Bane stuff anymore. And I think they actually did a story that revealed that.
That King Snake was Bane's father.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow,
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't follow anything that Bane is in, really, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest. That's done by anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
If Chuck writes it, then I'll read it.
Right.
But Chuck only wrote one book that I didn't draw.
Which one was that?
It was a Bane one-shot thing that they did. I forget who the artist was. Rick. What's his name? Rick. Can't remember his last name. But there was one Bane story I drew that Chuck didn't write.
Oh,
yeah.
So I guess you guys balanced it out then.
Yeah, we balanced it out.
That's good. I know Bane Conquest. I haven't read it yet, but everyone loved that series. Is that a lot of fun to work on, having Bane as a protagonist?
That was a ball. We had 12 issues to really expand Bane and bring his henchmen into it in a much more forward position. We were setting Bane up to be the Doctor Doom of the DC universe, and Bane was acquiring weapons from Apocalypse, and DC in their infinite wisdom decided they were going to go with the Tom King stuff and push that instead of ours, and didn't let us follow up on any of the Easter eggs that we left to continue on that big story arc.
That's really unfortunate. And Tom King never reached out to you?
No.
Oh, that's unfortunate as well. I mean, and they ended up canceling his series anyway because people weren't a fan of it.
Oh, it was terrible. I mean, I saw Bane naked on every page. He's like sitting on top of this throne of bones and stuff. It looked terrible.
Yeah, I never read it personally. I haven't, read any of that. And you guys should have been including Detective Comics 1000 as well. That was.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's not like you guys did a substantial run or anything.
We didn't invite to that party either.
Yeah, it's not like you guys had a substantial part in Detective Comics history or anything.
No, just
not even a cover, right?
You
didn't even.
Nope.
That's ridiculous.
Nope. But they had guys there doing stuff that had no connection to Batman at all, let alone Detective Comics.
Yeah, that's. So what was it working on Detective Comics? Did they treat you guys like, because obviously Detective Comics came first, right? But then Batman. But Batman is typically considered the main book.
Right.
Did you guys feel like you were ever fighting for, was there ever a hierarchy in terms of like the important stuff happens in this book? When you guys are working concurrently with the Batman office? Like how did that?
You froze up for a sec. It's okay.
I was wondering,
so could you just repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry about that. So basically, I was wondering if, like, with the Batman office, if there was like considered like the Batman book, if that was considered the main book, or if you guys ever kind of like fought it out, or if there was like a clear, this book is the backup, this is the priority, or like how did you guys kind of sort out the continuity of it, or who tells what stories, especially with Nightfall?
It was all connected together. Denny was the head guy, and everything went through Denny. So when we were working on stuff that was interconnected, like Nightfall, that type of stuff, pretty much Chuck and I took the lead on a lot of it because we were the fastest team. So there was a lot of times where a character had to be designed and it was going to come in Batman first, but the artist, like Jim Aparo, wasn't working on it yet because he was still finishing up the last issue, or the script hadn't come in from Doug Mensch, or I think, yeah, that's who it was. But Chuck and I we needed the stuff because we were working on our issue that had to have that character. So I would design that character and then send it on to them, and they would retro do it. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. So were there any big ones you created besides Bane, or any?
No, those are mostly ancillary characters, designs for places that had to happen, that kind of stuff,
Right.
storytelling things. Yeah.
Well, honestly, even like Bane's supporting that he has his own supporting cast, like Bird and all of them. I wish we saw more of them.
Well, they're in the Conquest a lot.
That's good. Yeah, I'm gonna absolutely pick that up. I think I'm gonna read all of Nightfall first, and then pick that one out. But
those guys are all named after rock bands.
Really?
1960s rock bands. Yeah, the Byrds, the Zombies, and the Trogs.
Oh my god! Can't believe I didn't notice that. That's wild. But that's a great one. And then another great one that I honestly it pisses me. The fact that it's not widely available is insane to me. But I finally read. I remember I was hanging out at the OmegaCon and I asked you who your favorite Batman villain besides Bane was, and no hesitation, you said the Joker. And not only that, but you told me that this was you and Chuck created the best Joker story ever. So I finally read it, and it was absolutely phenomenal, and it should be on every shelf, just like The Killing Joke is. It's not called Batman. It's Joker, Devil's Advocate.
Joker, Devil's Advocate. Yeah.
So what was it like working on that
one? We pitched it, and it was a pretty easy sell. And Chuck and I met in New York for an editorial meeting, and then we left the offices and went to Central Park and sat there. It was summer. It was a beautiful day, and we picked up like 3x5 cards, and we started writing down all the different scenes and then shuffling the cards, putting the scenes together in order. Because when you're writing a mystery, sometimes you have to work backwards and you have to place things, and so it happens in the right order without you revealing. You know how it's going to end, but you don't want anybody else to guess how it's going to end.
Right.
And one of the greatest compliments that we ever got was Archie Goodwin said to us, "I didn't see that coming." So we fooled Archie Goodwin and with our story, and so that was you couldn't get a higher compliment than that.
That's great. Yeah, that I do want to add. So that ending line, I remember you wrote the last line of the book, right? Was that you?
Where he says, "What's wrong? Don't you have any jokes for me?"
Yeah,
I wrote that.
Yeah, that's a great stinger. So I want to ask, because the reason that devastates the Joker, right? Would you say that was his ego was his downfall, or would you say?
Well, it was more of a shot across the bow to The Killing Joke.
Right.
Because we hated how that ended.
I don't like the ending either. I love that book, but the ending sucks.
It's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous book, but it doesn't give you a payoff.
No,
and I remember I was furious when I read that thing. I was like, God damn, this thing, he's fucking with us here. And so this was our Rio Bravo to High Noon. So we did our Joker story, and I wanted Batman to acknowledge the fact that he doesn't laugh at the Joker's jokes.
Right. And so is that, but like in the context of the story itself, with that line, because I one thing I like about it is that the Joker, how mad the Joker gets in this story, just repeatedly. And one thing I do like about it too is that it's finally, especially where I'm growing up, there's all these like stories where Batman doesn't really win against the Joker, and that kind of started. I like that it's like a definitive win, for Batman. It kind of is for the Joker in the sense that he's not dead, but like, I did really like that aspect, and I like the pacing of it too. And when I felt like your Joker, I wonder if the animated series pulled from your Joker's facial expressions. I love how animated, your version is.
Well, I think the animated series had already been on by the time we did Devil's Advocate. But I was always influenced by Jerry Robinson's Joker. I really liked the way he did it. I never liked Neil Adams' Joker. So it was pretty much like Dick Sprang, Jerry Robinson, going back to those features that I liked a lot, that kind of ragged hair look, versus that swept up clown hair that Neil gave him. I didn't care for that.
One thing I really like, I thought the Joker was genuinely funny in Devil's Advocate. Like there's a lot of
Oh
funny
yeah,
lines, like when he's confessing, and the guy's like, "Oh my god, what's going on?" He's like, "No, nothing. He's just confessing his
yeah,
crimes." It's just
yeah.
great.
I
Um,
love when he hears the harmonica. It's
oh,
like one of those
that one made
prison
me.
tropes, and then you see the guy, the doctors, in the infirmary, looking up at an X-ray, and the X-ray is like this um, harmonica in the dude's stomach, and he goes, "Yep, we're gonna have to operate."
That was one of my favorite jokes in the book. That
Yeah,
was so
there's
funny.
some great stuff in
That
there.
was a great
But
cutaway. Yeah.
what really made that story so great is that it shows that Batman's all about justice, and
Hmm.
people question him. Robin even questioned him, or Commissioner Gordon certainly questioned him about let justice catch up with this guy. He's killed so many people. He keeps getting out. We know he deserves this. Why don't we just let? And Batman says, it doesn't work that way because somebody did murder these people. It
Hmm.
wasn't him, and that person's going to get away free, you know. So, Batman's about the law taking over. And that was what we wanted to drive home in that story.
I love that. I love and Tim Drake, for the record, is my favorite Robin, and I think this helped reaffirm that. Is I love that moment where he's like, "Tim, aren't you going to question me?" And he's like, "No." Essentially, I love that even Alfred questions it. I love the moral dilemma, but I love that Batman is unfazed in it. There's so many stories. I think it's okay to have the occasional story where Batman doubts himself, but I think when you're doing it
Mhm.
issue after issue after issue after issue, it's
Yeah.
like, well, okay, does this guy have any conviction at all? Does this guy
Yeah.
have
In
any?
the latest one, he has panic attacks. I mean, come on, Batman has panic attacks. Give me a
Yeah,
break.
only
Stop
him and
writing your own
Scarecrow.
therapy sessions into this character.
Yeah, I think save those for the Scarecrow encounters. Like when it's
Yeah,
like
when you can explain it.
right. I mean it's yeah. There's a lot of stuff that I do. I like how Batman is one of the things, and I remember you talking about this the other night when I was watching your stream. Is that I would always hear these debates. People would say, "Is Batman as crazy as the villains he fight?" And I'd always say, "No,
Mm-mm.
no, just open and shut. No, he's not.
Right.
He's not." Next question. Like he's a good person. He
Yeah.
sacrificed an easy life to make the world a better place. Like no,
Right.
he's not.
Yeah. He's a Galahadian knight on a quest.
Hmm.
Wonderful heroic literature in the finest heroic literature sense. As soon as you start putting all these real life labels on him and real life behavioral things, then all it does is point out the silliness of anybody in a cape and cowl
Hmm.
running around doing anything,
Hmm.
outside of cosplay, and even then.
Yeah, they're supposed to be larger than life, and
Yeah,
I
it's
think
not the real world, people.
yeah, it's not. It's supposed to inspire us to do better in the real world, and I think that sometimes, I understand where sometimes it's coming from, but I don't think it's always executed well. I think everyone keeps trying to do a lot of what Alan Moore did, um, and it's like, what's wrong with that? What else was doing? That
Hmm.
inspired Alan Moore in the first place. I think
Well,
that
even Alan
that's
Moore has said, he regrets doing the deconstruction because that's all we have now. He
yeah.
loved those fun comics growing up
Hmm.
as a kid, those fun and silly comics. Um, they're fun to read, you know.
Hmm.
I mean, I saw one the other day. It might have been Secret Wars or something. Captain America's on a plane flying coach, and he's sitting there in his costume with his wings on his head and stuff. Now, imagine how silly that would be in the real world.
Right.
But there's this guy and he's sitting on it, but people say, oh, that's Captain America. They
Yeah.
accept it. It's the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. That was one of the things that's kind of nice going to these older Batman stories. Is Batman finds a way to be grounded while also larger than life in a way that
Mhm.
not even a lot of other superheroes can. There's this brilliant mythology, and you strike me as someone who's a big fan of that. Um,
Mhm.
growing up, the Batman character in general.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he and Superman were probably my two favorites when I was a young boy. Um, but I love the Batman in the '70s when Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil and the forgotten Frank Robbins, brought him back into the Dark Knight.
Mm,
They trimmed him down. He was working out of that high-rise apartment. There was a lot of gothic tales being told,
Mhm.
because Gothic stories were selling and stuff like that, and it fit perfect into Batman's world. Even those early detective comics where he fought vampires and the monk and all this other stuff. They brought him back to that, and that was when I started really buying Batman comics too. So those stories still hold up to me. How they handled Batman, and it's sort of like the benchmark of how to approach the character to me.
So was it working for Denny O'Neil after experiencing all of that? I mean, that must have been crazy for you. How was that?
Well, I didn't have a whole lot of interaction with Denny because Denny basically dealt mostly with the writers
Mhm.
and the assistant editors, Scott Peterson and Darren Vincenzo. On the detective side, handled the art and the production and all that other stuff. So outside of conferences, bat conferences that we'd have to work out the storylines for the coming year, I didn't have a lot of actual interaction with Denny.
Okay, I was just curious what that was like, but I mean, his run I know is considered legendary on the character. Did you ever do any Superman?
Yeah, I did Superman: The Odyssey, one of my favorite books.
All right, I'll have to write that down.
Yeah.
I missed that.
It was a prestige book. Co-wrote it with Chuck, and it was a story I wanted to tell the story about. Well, what happens when Clark Kent left Smallville before he goes to Metropolis? What did he do? And he still doesn't really know. He's an alien. He doesn't know his superpowers, that kind of stuff. He knows he can do certain things, but like what was the first time Clark Kent was shot? What was that like? It's one thing to be able to lift a tractor and say you're strong, but it's another thing to have a bullet bounce off you. And so there was this really great sequence where he falls in love with this Chinese woman who is actually like a Dalai Lama, and she's running away from the Chinese government. And they send a hit squad out to get her, and this Chinese hit squad, busts through and all their gear and shit and MP5s, and they start blasting to kill her. And Clark, not knowing any better, but just jumps in front of her because that's who he is. He doesn't know he's bulletproof, and the bullets bounce off of him, and he's as shocked as the Chinese guys. They're looking, they're freaking out, and then he looks down and he sees his clothes are all ripped, and then he looks up at the guys and he goes, "Cool."
That's awesome.
And then he lays it. The guys go running and jumping out windows and shit. So
I've never heard of that one. I'll
yeah.
have to look into it.
Yeah.
That's wow. All right. So I've got my reading list checked out. I did have the set aside however long. I was like, okay, no, I'm only reading Graham Nolan comics this week. That was what, like Girls Dimension 13. I finished that.
I love that.
That was on. Yeah. So are you, now that Aftershock is doing whatever it's I don't even know. Are you going to be able to continue that series?
They don't seem to have any interest in continuing it. So I'm just waiting for the rights to revert back to me and Brett. And then I will assess it and see if I want to integrate that into the Nolan verse and into Compass Comics.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
The Nolan verse is getting bigger and bigger. Monster Island. I think that's the only, Monster Island's one of the only ones I haven't read, and Joe Frankenstein.
Okay.
But I've read all your crowdfunded. Like I've read Shanu. I love Shanu. It felt like Night of the Living Dead is one of the reasons I really liked it. I liked Alien Alamo. That one was a lot of fun. I'm a big Alien guy, so I liked that. And
that's the book I get the most requests for. Because I have more being printed right now, and they'll be up on my store probably the beginning of April. But I get a lot of requests for that because people really love that story. They love, it was one of those things where I wasn't sure how it was going to be received because, it takes place in 1957.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of a cowboy tale because it takes place on a ranch, and then it's got sci-fi elements in it. But then it's really the real crux of the story is a relationship story between a father and a son. And, that seemed like a hard sell, but the people that read it just loved that book, and I
Yeah.
was so pleased with how it was received.
Yeah, I mean, I like westerns too. I remember I kind of went on a western kick after I read The Searchers script for class, and then I watched
Ah,
that movie.
very cool.
I love this. The Searchers is my favorite. That's my number. I mean, to be fair, I'm fairly pedestrian with some of my westerns, but that one's probably that. I like Man Who Shot Liberty Valance as well. Thought that
That's a
one was
good one.
great. Um,
When the
I
legend
need
becomes fact, print the legend.
yes, that was like a commentary in the western genre. I feel like, right?
Well,
Is
they
that
certainly made it clear in that one. That was a
yeah?
running theme.
I loved that one. That one I thought was that. I feel like that one doesn't get enough praise, but
Yeah. The only problem with that one is James Stewart's a little long in the tooth for that role. He's a little old for that
you
role.
think so?
Yeah. He's supposed to be this young guy that comes west, to follow his dream, set up a law practice. But at the time, Jimmy
Him and they were the same
Stewart,
age, right?
50 something years old.
I forgot he was supposed to be young because he and John Wayne are like the same age in that movie.
Yeah.
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 I love Jimmy Stewart that I was kind of like giving it a pass, but yeah, no, he's definitely not the right age.
Yeah.
But he's Jimmy Stewart, so I can kind of forgive.
Well, that scene where he walks out of the political rally, and you see John Wayne follow after him. He goes, "Where are you going, Pilgrim?" And Jimmy Stewart says, "I'm going home, Tom. I'm going home." And he says, "Well, Valance wouldn't make you run. What are you running from now?" And he says, "Do you know what it's like to base a career on killing a man?" And John Wayne looks at him and he lights that cigarette and he goes, "You talk too much, think too much. Besides, you didn't kill Liberty Valance." And he's like, oh.
Yeah.
He says, "Think back, Pilgrim." And then they do this wonderful dissolve.
Yeah.
And then it goes back to the alleyway and you see the same scene shot from a different
Yeah.
angle. Beautiful, beautiful.
Oh yeah, that reveal was great.
Yeah.
That scene was fantastic.
Yeah,
That was
great
such a good
film.
movie.
Yeah.
I watched that for a class too. So
Cool.
but I mean I would have wanted to watch it anyway after The Searchers because
Yeah.
I love John Ford's work. So
Yeah.
Western, you've cosmic stuff. Is there any cosmic stuff coming in the Nolan verse or
Well, Monster Island, the third part of the Monster Island trilogy will be somewhat cosmic because the island vanished out into space at the end of Return to Monster Island. So, so there'll be some space stuff in that one.
great. What's the best way to get the Monster Island books? I see them right behind you, obviously.
Wait, because
Wait.
I'm publishing. I'm publishing Return to Monster Island under the Compass Comics banner, and the original Monster Island, which the original one from 1998, which is this one here, was the first book published for Compass Comics.
Oh wow! Yeah, I do remember you telling me that. Yeah.
Now that is available on the Compass Comics website.
All right, let me put that in the chat. It's in the chat, but I'll put it in again.
So you can find that one there, and then Return to Monster Island. I'm going to reprint so that it's under the Compass Comics banner, and then after that one, just like I'm reprinting Joe Frankenstein, then that'll make way for the new one, which will be Escape from Monster Island.
Gotcha. So you guys all know where to check out Graham's stuff. As much as I'd love to have you back with Batman, it seems like I'm liking everything you're doing now, and I'm the creator-owned stuff. I'm sure is just like super fulfilling. Were a lot of these ideas you were sitting on?
Actually, a bunch of them, like the Chenu and Alien Alamo, were all pitched to different publishers, and they all said no.
What was their reasonings for that? That's ridiculous. Those are so good.
Yeah, who knows? But they did me a favor.
Yeah,
because it gave me, these ideas that I could run with when I decided to go ahead and launch my own company and start publishing my own books.
Yeah, too original, I guess.
So thank you, DC Comics. Thank you, Aftershock. Thank you, Dark Horse, for all saying no.
Yeah, well, I got to read them now, so it's Good on me. So Graham, where can we find you? Obviously, compasscomics.com.
Yeah.
Make sure I'll get those links out one last time.
Great. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram. And I'm on YouTube too. I do my own show Wednesday nights, The Storytellers, and I'm on other people's shows too. We do the professionals, all on YouTube. So if you type my name, Graham Nolan, into YouTube, my channel will come up. So subscribe, please.
Yeah, I'm putting that link in the chat too. No, it doesn't cost you a thing.
Nope.
These should all be in the channel description anyway, but why not? I'm just throwing them in the chat anyway.
Sure. Yeah. So you'll find all that stuff in the description of the show.
Yeah. But
to answer Bobby's question.
I missed you, Bobby.
Yeah, it was was I a big Doug Wildley fan? Yeah, I loved his Rio stuff. The westerns, the Rio westerns that he did, and of course his Johnny Quest, and he did a lot of great stuff. I like Wildley's work a lot. Never got to meet him though.
Did you get to meet any of the other Universal Monsters people?
I met Ben Chapman, who was the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Oh, that was a recent one.
Yeah, I met. Now there's two creatures. There was Rico Browning, who played the creature underwater, and then there was Ben Chapman, who played the creature above the water, because Glenn was like, or Ben was like 6'6", something like that, and they needed a really bigger guy. I got to meet Julie Adams, who was also in The Creature from the Black Lagoon.
I need to rewatch all those movies.
Yeah. Kevin McCarthy, I met him, who was from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Yeah.
The original?
Yeah, the original.
Okay.
I got a picture of my girls with him. He just loved them because they're little Irish lasses, and he was an Irishman too. And he had them come around the table, and he's giving them all a big kiss and everything. Really nice guy.
I have to see. I've only seen the '78 version. I'll have to check.
That's a good one though.
Yeah, that most remakes aren't great, but
yeah,
that. And then I know you're partial to the original The Thing, which I do need to see.
Oh yeah.
But I love the Carpenter version. Sounds
I like the Carpenter version a lot.
Oh.
I read the Campbell book or novella, I guess, and it definitely follows closer to that one.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some issues with that one that they resolve better in the original, and mostly it's characterization.
Yeah, well, I'd love to talk monsters at some point, but Graham, thank you so much.
We'll do it in New Jersey.
Yeah, we'll do it in New Jersey. And speaking of which, my friend Bobby was with us. I don't know if you remember him. He said, as a diehard Batman fan since I was 4, I was probably around the same. It was an honor drinking with you after Garden State, sir. Hope to see you there again. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Excellent. I do remember Bobby.
Yeah. Well, we'll both be there this year.
Good.
So
good. It's gonna be a great time. We got a lot of guys coming.
Oh yeah.
So
it's gonna be a really fun show this year.
Pull the pickup trucks in the back there.
Cigars, wine shirts.
Yeah, bourbon.
Yeah,
and lots of lies.
Lies. Oh, okay, we'll do some lies then. All right, thank you so much, guys.
Okay, thank you, Vaughn.
I'll see you. And